My name is Shari, and this is the Heavily Meddled Podcast. On this podcast, I interview patients, medical professionals, and industry insiders, having important discussions regarding the all too commonly experienced but lesser identified symptoms of hypersensitivity to metals contained in implanted medical and dental hardware, diet, and environments. These metals often cause a variety of dysfunctional immune responses, chronic pain, and other syndromes that fly under the radar of most patients and physicians. During these interviews, the patients and I discuss ideas for managing symptoms, share personal lifestyle modifications, and talk about how to advocate with and educate providers pre- and post-surgery, along with options found for implant removal and the how-to of adverse event reporting. This podcast does not give medical advice. From time to time, I may interview medical professionals that render personal opinions you can use to follow up with your individual provider. Let's roll. Hello, metalheads, and welcome to the jungle. Thanks for coming back for this edition of the Heavily Meddled Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about some hard things. I'm going to give an update on my personal health and life circumstances, address some breaking news within the metal allergic community, and speak very candidly about some heartbreaking allegations that were directed at the podcast and I. And I will let you know about hopes and dreams I have regarding the podcast plans for the future. It's going to be a little bit of a ride, so buckle up. For many of you who follow me, you are aware that within the last 8 months, I have undergone 3 pretty substantial surgeries. The number of surgeries I've had during the course of my health challenges now number over 40, and that's a lot. 3 of the years I was fully bedridden, but thankfully am no longer. It appears that many of the surgeries were caused by hypermobility in a lot of my joints, potentially due to EDS or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Just for a recap, those who may not have seen my story, part 1 is all the symptoms, part 2 is all the miracles, first 2 episodes of the podcast. Make sure you make it to part 2 because that's where the good stuff is. But I have had extreme difficulty since 2017 walking, sitting, or standing. I've had multiple surgeries to address these issues, but a lion's share of these issues were not only the metal hypersensitivity that I have, extreme type 1 and type 4 hypersensitivities, but a lot of instability in my lumbar spine and pelvis, with the pelvis being the most problematic. During the course of my workups over time, we became aware that I had a very badly broken and dislocated tailbone or coccyx. This was thought to be the source of much of my pain, and I had my tailbone removed in October of last year. I'm still recovering from that surgery. In December, I had my 7th surgery to remove metal hardware, a metal plate and screws from my cervical spine. Thankfully, I'm doing well as I recover from that surgery and continuing to realize improvement in the metal allergic realm. I used to have to take 3 Allegra every day, multiple doses of hydroxyzine and Dayquil around the clock. I'm happy to report that I now take half an Allegra once per day, hardly ever take hydroxyzine, and rarely have to take Dayquil or other H1 and H2 blockers. The relief of symptoms due to removal of metal hardware and adherence to a low nickel diet and lifestyle in my home and personal environment is consistent and reproducible, and I'm so grateful for my almost complete return to health. In the middle of my tailbone workup with one of the nation's top coccyx removal specialists, Northern California, by the way, it was found that I had cysts on the nerve roots of my sacrum. These are called Tarlov cysts. It turns out that the specialist who removed my tailbone is one of 3 specialist neurosurgeons in the country that addresses these cysts that are symptomatic in many people. People with EDS often have this as a comorbid condition. Not all of these cysts are symptomatic if you have them, but it's thought that mine were and were a big contributor to my ongoing symptoms. I had surgery to wrap and drain these cysts on my sacrum after undergoing a lot of testing and consultations earlier this year. This is a very delicate and difficult surgery on the actual nerve roots, and recovery takes many years. I'm about 3 months in, so I'm in the middle of that recovery at this time. And thanks to God and many prayers and well wishes, I'm doing quite well for where I'm at following this surgery. They did need to implant 4 metal plates within my sacrum, which is never good news for a metal allergic patient. Thankfully, I had an amazing surgeon who was very open to my experience and resources with severe metal hypersensitivity. He learned right away how devastating surgical hardware can be, even something as small as titanium microplates. I so much have the best medical team, and I'm already on the schedule to have those plates removed this fall after the bone in my sacrum heals. He was ready, willing, and able, and I'm so grateful I met him. I set him up with an appointment with Dr. Scott Schroeder. They had a great conversation, so he's really going to be a champion for us, and that's awesome. Tarlov cysts can mimic bowel and bladder dysfunction, sexual dysfunction, sciatica, pain in the pelvis, pain in the gluteus muscles, and pain in the lumbar spine. So again, that's something else to look into in your workups. Many doctors don't think these are symptomatic. It used to be on the rare disease list, but because they are finding that they are symptomatic in a pretty large subset of patients, it was just recently in the last few months removed off the rare disease list. So something to check out if you suffer from low back, butt, leg pain, that kind of thing. But anyway, I'm so grateful to him. And as a competent neurosurgeon, he also expressed his willingness to remove spinal hardware and hardware in the brain from patients with metal allergy issues. I'm grateful every minute for surgeons that embrace new information that they were not taught in medical school about systemic metal allergies. Not only did he embrace it, but he ran with it. And like I mentioned, he's actively seeking, just like I am, to help others that suffer. The demand is so high for this kind of help with health and hardware removal that the list cannot be long enough of surgeons willing to provide these services. We are working on that. So like all trials in my life, there's usually a silver lining at the end. And sometimes I have to be the one to suffer to bring the silver lining forward. So be it. I've always said that if what I've gone through helps just one person, that it's been worth all of it. The silver lining in that situation is that I am now aware of an entirely new community of patients that may be enduring symptoms from metal hypersensitivity and ongoing chronic symptoms due to surgical clips and plates used with Tarlov cyst surgery. Bringing awareness of systemic hypersensitivity into this community will result in many more people being able to look at metal allergies as a potential cause of continuing chronic pain, symptoms, and syndromes. And I'm so glad that through my experiences, I will be able to reach yet another community with life-saving information. And I'm sure there are many more out there. Hopefully, I don't have to experience all of the maladies to have a continued and growing impact. I'm getting pretty tired. Just before I left to undergo this surgery, my 85-year-old mother, who has been my best friend for my entire life and my closest confidant, was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And the cancer had metastasized to her entire spine, her skull, both ribs, and along with that, she had melanoma that was rapidly spreading throughout her body. I am the one responsible for all her affairs and her medical care. Sadly, my mom knew that she was at the end of her journey and chose to be put on hospice. Just 4 weeks ago, I lost my sweet mom. It's tragic and one of the most pivotal losses of my entire life. I'm so blessed to have had such a wonderful, supportive mother and to still have a close and supportive family. But it's going to take me a minute to recover from such a devastating loss. She didn't just leave a hole. She She left a crater. We're holding a celebration of her life at the end of next week. And then a few weeks later, another one in the northern part of the country. I hope to be just like her. She was such an encourager. She always used to say she'd always be on the front row clapping. Everybody she met loved her. She had more friends than I could count on 1,000,000 hands. And she really made a difference as she walked through this world. And I really strive and hope that I can be a 10th of the person that she was. Thank you for those who have sent your condolences. I ask for your continued well wishes and patience while I grieve this super substantial loss and navigate a new normal. Many of you know from a post I made earlier today that one of the sponsors of the Heavily Meddled podcast, MELISA Diagnostics, has had to put a temporary pause on offering blood metal LTT lymphocyte transformation testing to U.S. clientele. Here is the official statement I received earlier today from the CEO, Linda Nelson. MELISA testing is not currently available for U.S. clients. All samples must be sent to Europe for testing. However, our partner lab in Germany that processed all samples from the U.S. closed down unexpectedly at the end of April. The shutdown is not a consequence of bad service or of poor quality of work, but failure of business development management. There is a laboratory in Switzerland that performs MELISA, but does not have the capacity to process samples in the following weeks. Another laboratory providing MELISA is located in Spain, but the country's policy does not allow accepting blood samples from areas outside the European Union. Due to the above, we are unable to support U.S. clients at this time. We are working hard to establish cooperation with a new reliable lab partner quickly. However, due to the complexity of the test and associated requirements, this will take some time and weeks. We will contact clients as soon as the situation changes. In the meantime, Orthopedic Analysis in Chicago offers metal hypersensitivity testing. Obviously, we send all our good warm fuzzies over to MELISA across the pond and hope to have good news to share soon regarding testing options for U.S. clientele. I think they're very close to having a lab in the United States or in North America that will be able to quickly and efficiently provide MELISA testing to those of us who are desiring that testing here in the metal allergic community. So sending our love, MELISA. One of the next episodes of Heavily Meddled that will be released will be a walkthrough on orthopedic analysis testing. I've had orthopedic analysis testing before. I've had so much hardware removed that I'm retesting, and we'll show you the walkthrough, how to do the test, and go over those live results here when I get them back with orthopedic analysis and their office there. So looking forward to that. They are based in Chicago. They offer a wonderful lymphocyte transformation test, and they offer metal ion testing as well. So you can check out your metal burden regarding titanium, nickel, and cobalt. You can also listen back several podcast episodes to hear more specifics about the orthopedic analysis test and the episodes that I did with the CEO and CFOs of this great company. There is a place for all of these providers in helping provide answers to the metal allergic community as we all strive to recover from decades of gaslighting and PTSD from our many symptoms and illnesses. And it takes a village. To that point, I want to speak about heartbreaking allegations that I feel may be affecting the health, recovery, and well-being of the metal allergic community as a whole. Unfortunately, many of these allegations seem to be directed at me as an individual and to efforts that I have put forth in launching the Heavily Meddled podcast and producing it this past 18 months. I don't really do controversy or drama, and I strive to surround myself with positive people and positive circumstances because life is too short to do otherwise. My word and my character is probably one of the most important and cherished attributes in my life. And when these are attacked, I feel like I have no choice but to make an official statement to defend myself against these baseless allegations. I'm going to do it once, and I'm going to let this stand as my position on all of these issues. I am not going to answer questions. I'm not going to make further statements. I'm not going to make any further clarifications, and I'm not going to speak to any further allegations. It just simply does not take me into a place of health or healing, and I choose to focus on those things that bring light and joy into a community that is hurting. It is said that hurt people, and I strive not to hurt, but to lift, help, encourage, and I do that in everything I strive to touch in my life. It is completely devastating that I have to even address this, especially with everything else I have on my plate right now. But like I said, my character and my word is so important. I just have no choice. So bear with me as we run through a lot of the nitty gritty, and hopefully you'll have a better understanding of where I stand, the goals of the podcast, and plans for the podcast going forward. It's a pretty big list, and I'm just going to go through it and respond one item at a time. Before I do that, I want to give you a high-level background behind these allegations. Once upon a time, there was a Facebook group that was focused on mental hypersensitivity that I was a member of. The person that runs this group has a lot of incredible knowledge and donates much of her time, putting a lot of heart and soul into patient advocacy. That's admirable. I don't need to name the group because this group has a lot of good within. It provides a lot of value to my followers and to its followers, and it's an incredible resource for many people. It was an incredible resource for me. I am sad to this day that I'm no longer a part of this group. I'm also not going to name the individual. I will start by saying that this is somebody that I cared deeply for, and I still wish her the best on her journey. When we cut off communication about 18 months ago, I told her that all I wanted was her health and her healing, and that I didn't want to contribute to anything that would take her or her health backwards. I meant it. She was going to be my first podcast guest and is somebody that has had and still has an incredible story of triumph. I had hoped to launch the podcast with her willing contributions and resources that she heartily volunteered. And I even hoped to have her potentially fill in when and if I was ever traveling or needed a co-anchor. She helped me through a lot of my journey, and I thought we had a lot of really great plans that would have been such a bonus to the metal allergic community. In the end, for a lot of reasons I don't understand, she did an about face, had second thoughts, felt pressured, and was not comfortable with the approach or appearing on camera. And in the end, we had some differences of opinions that just couldn't be overcome. I'm confident that we still don't understand each other, and I can't explain it. I told her that I would remove myself from her groups so as not to cause any further trauma and from her circles, and promised that I would not use any of her resources, and that I would further remove any of her contributions that I had access to from my plans and files. And I told her that I would not send people to her group. And this was at her request, because even though I thought that was a huge loss for the community, she was concerned that her group would be overwhelmed from podcast listeners by an influx of people that she wouldn't be able to manage, or invaded by those in the medical industry that shared opposing viewpoints. I still feel differently about that. The public can easily find public-facing groups, and That's with or without me. I'm just a small podcast. I've got probably 20,000 followers across all platforms. My episodes get between 500 and 1,500 plays across all platforms. And in the terms of the universe, I just saw this great eclipse a few weeks ago and totality of that eclipse. And I tell you, we are very small. I'm a very small person and my life is pretty insignificant, as it were. But I can stand here today and tell you that I have respected those wishes. I have never mentioned the name of her group on camera and very rarely in private to anybody that I'm not close with. I have never referred anybody to her group, although I do hope they find it if needed for the benefit that it can bring. What I have done in my podcast is I have stated that there are many online communities that are focused on metal and implant hypersensitivity. And that's true. They can be of great worth. They can be a great sense of community for those who are struggling, and they can offer a lot of support and they can save lives. So by all means, if you don't listen to my podcast, go find you a group because they're important. Many of these groups saved my life. It wasn't just one. There were 5, 6, 7 or more. I will be forever grateful for the recovery that I have had due to information that I obtained in many of these social media groups online and in those communities. And I have made some lasting lifelong friends. I have not said a single bad word against this individual or against her group ever. I've rarely spoken her name in 18 months, but to the contrary, if it's ever brought up between a mutual friend and I, or if anybody asks, I state that I care very much for the founder of this group, and I believe that she is well-intentioned. I hope she's been able to find further health and healing on her journey. Her journey's been hard like yours and like mine, and like so many that we know. At the end of the day, my hope is that we all get well, and this does not change. I will likely never understand why she has felt the need to become a detractor to my efforts, and it will forever break my heart. I cannot control what others see, think, hear, or feel. I can only state my position, and then it will be what it will be. I was just going along doing my life despite very difficult circumstances of late. And all of a sudden, many followers and supporters within her group reached out to me expressing concern. Thankfully, most were expressing concern and support for me, or it would have even been harder to take. It's not about her versus me, though. Let me be abundantly clear. I was just in a hard place, so I'm really grateful that I had the grace of that support. I received a lot of emails and a lot of screenshots, and frankly, the timing of this in my life could not have been worse. I had some podcast guests lined up that had to back out, not because of me or the podcast, but because they're in lawsuits with manufacturers and attorneys have asked them not to speak. So there were 3 or 4 of those. And so I lost a lot of guests all in one day. The MELISA news was not good. Then some issues with my mom and some other issues within my family. But it just added to an already incredibly heavy burden. And I will say to you that did support me, I'm so very, very grateful for your support and for at least a chance and a platform to speak my own truth for whoever wants to hear it. So let's get into the issues. I'm going to break down the allegations and accusations one at a time. First allegation has to do with a screenshot posted within this group stating that I have stolen a symptom list from her. It's a screenshot of a graphic on my website with her graphic over it, referring to it as stolen content and implying that I have stolen intellectual property and sold it as a free resource. I will first say that the allegations are 100% unfounded. I will explain more. I used to work in the music business, and specifically in the realm of intellectual property and copyright management. I used to work for major music publishers and for some of the largest music artists in the country. It's known social media is a public forum. Once material, even in the form of an individual statement, a status post, a photograph, or a document has been released on social media, it can be a public free-for-all. Now, that's not to say that it should be, but social media is a public-facing forum. Once something is posted there, it can be taken and used, and it's very difficult to call it back. So be careful what you post. The symptom list that I posted on my website was not a stolen symptom list or a stolen resource. It might have some similar content. Some symptoms may be the same because that's what they're clinically called, but it did not resemble her list, and it was not her list. Symptom lists are not intellectual property or confidential information. The symptoms I listed on my list and posted on the website are detailed in many public studies and peer-reviewed published literature. Many of the symptoms were mine. On my list, I had all but 2 of my symptoms, and I can list them from personal experience. No further clarification needed. Case in point, if you Google symptoms of a heart attack, you will come up with many websites, and most of these will list many of the same symptoms. These are not intellectual property violations. Posting a screenshot from my website with my content and posting a direct allegation over it is slander, and it is defamation of my character. Posting comments in relation to that, making threats of repercussions or public shaming, those are direct threats, and they will not be tolerated. This is when I knew something had to be said. I do not steal documents. I do not steal materials. I haven't. I won't. Not past, present, or future, period. Next, an allegation that I produced this podcast with the primary goal of my own fame and fortune. Well, first of all, if I did, it's not working. Secondly, if you know my story at all, you know that I've been there and done that, and I've gotten the t-shirt, and I've been famous. Once upon another lifetime, I was on the Hollywood A-list. I hung out with rock stars. Heck, I hung out with Donald Trump once. Don't take that anywhere. That was a party with 1 million people. But I was a co-attendee, and I was there. I dated people that lived in the limelight. Because of that, I was in the limelight. I was a columnist and a contributing editor for the largest rock and roll magazine in the country. I attended awards shows. I was with pivotal bands for many pivotal breaking news moments, and many times I had to speak for them. I had famous boyfriends. I had to do damage control, and thankfully I know how to do that so that I can do it now. What's important about my life history in regards to Hollywood? I left. I left Hollywood. I left that lifestyle because I did not want to be famous. I did not and do not want to live my life under a microscope or in the court of public opinion. That is still the case to this day, and I have led a pretty quiet life since then. I enjoy living in a cabin in the woods with my husband, dogs, horses, chickens, sheep, ducks, geese. It's quiet here and there's no drama. I love this and it speaks to my soul. So no, I don't do the podcast to be famous. It keeps me, frankly, in more of the public eye than I actually want to be. And believe me, that has its drawbacks. This is one of them, public criticism. But I'm doing it because I've had the journey I've had and I know what I know. And I have to do it because lives have to be saved. So believe me, if my conscience would allow me to shelve it all, I would. And I've thought about it more than once. And now, a word from our sponsor. Attention metalheads. Are you struggling with skin rashes, joint and systemic pain, or fatigue that just won't go away? Type 4 metal allergy is often overlooked as a culprit in many of today's chronic illnesses. Get to the root of the problem with MELISA testing. MELISA is a scientifically proven and clinically validated test that measures immune reactivity to metal allergens like nickel, cobalt, and titanium. With fast and reliable results, you can get the answers you need to find relief and live a healthier life. Don't let metal allergies control your life any longer. Visit melisa.org to learn more and schedule your test. Trust us, you'll be glad you did. MELISA, a valuable diagnostic tool in medicine. Next allegation. The goal of my podcast is to make money. Money that I'm being accused of making or trying to make at the expense of a patient population. The reality is that I don't make anything off this podcast. I haven't made a single cent of profit in 18 months. I believe I'm actually showing something close to a $10,000 write-off on my tax return for the money that I've invested in my efforts the last 18 months regarding heavily metalled. I receive a very small stipend from a podcast advertiser on a monthly basis. That doesn't even cover half of the expenses that I have for the monthly infrastructure to support the podcast. It's editing, it's production, it's software, it's upgrades, it's special features, it's advertising, it's paying for content to be seen online. Since its inception, I have received one $300 donation, and that paid to help edit a couple of episodes during my recovery from surgery. Sometimes I receive some income from social media ads or content. At the height, I had a post that received several million views and reached several million people. I received $178 that month from Facebook. Most months average between $5 and $11 per month. So if I was doing this to get rich, I sure picked the wrong business. So that's the end of the income situation. There is none. Everything I do to support this podcast is out of the kindness of my heart. And it is with the goal to save lives. 100%, 100% of what I have received has gone back into producing the podcast and spreading the word about metal hypersensitivity. I have not so much as brought an ice cream cone with any proceeds. I am thankful that I have a successful full-time real estate career and that I have some money to invest in this effort. I'm not sure how long that's going to actually continue. It is many, many hundreds of dollars a month. Think car payment. It's bigger to run heavily metalled. Have you taken note of what the real estate market is in this country lately? Hasn't been a great year. As the matter of fact, and as mentioned earlier, MELISA Diagnostics, who's one of my podcast sponsors, is not offering services in the US at this time. All of this controversy that I am now addressing comes on the heels of possibly losing funding from my only advertiser. If that happens, I'm literally not sure that I can continue to maintain the infrastructure of the podcast. This might be a self-solving problem. If I go down, it will be with a fight because I know it's making a difference. And I hear from you that it is saving lives. Let me tell you that even if I wanted to, and I just don't have the time to be rich or famous. I am working 80 hours plus every week, navigating my own health journey. I don't sleep well. And rain or shine, 30% of that 80 hours a week is on this podcast. I edit it myself most of the time. I write it. I talk to people. I create content. I do all my social media. I'm literally exhausted physically and mentally. The next allegation, the symptom list that I posted jeopardizes patient care. Well, that one's lost on me. I've said before in many episodes, as well as personally, frequently, and often, that these symptoms are shared by many diseases and syndromes. They are symptoms of a nervous system that is hyperreactive or malfunctioning. The symptoms on the list that I have posted are not mutually exclusive to metal hypersensitivity. They may serve as a clue that one could have metal hypersensitivity. I am not a provider. I do not give medical advice. Anything I post is to be discussed with a personal medical provider of your choice. I am not that person, nor do I want to be. Many of these symptoms were my personal experience, and they were a direct result of my own personal journey and hypersensitivity reaction to metals. So if someone takes my list and goes running off to a provider stating they have a metal allergy because of X symptom or symptoms, that provider will likely look at them like they are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And at that point, they may be. Again, these symptoms are only clues that might speak to a bigger picture. A full clinical evaluation needs to be made by a personal provider, supported by metal allergy test results. Common sense. Next, accusation that I'm selling materials I received for free and selling them for profit. I have not sold anything, anywhere. Certainly, if I had, I would not have sold materials that were not mine without express written permission. But again, I have not sold one thing, so this point is completely moot. Next, I'm using patient experiences for shock value, views, and followers. Well, that certainly isn't a goal, but maybe it is a goal, but not for the reasons you think. Unfortunately, the way media works is you have to have a headline to share a story. This is not a tactic that is mutually exclusive to me. I share patient stories with the patient's full permission. They sign a release before they ever come on the podcast. And that permission is to help draw attention to a health crisis that is costing lives. Are some of the stories shocking? Absolutely. Does it gain views and followers who want to learn more? Abso-freaking-lutely. Has it saved lives? Yes, absolutely. It is difficult to get the information into the mass media without a headline. It's the journalism business. I try to put forth journalism that serves the greater good. The only reason I care about how many followers I have is that it means that the word is getting out about a very serious and life-altering issue. It's helping people dodge bullets in surgery. It's helping people be able to stand and walk again. It's helping people get rid of decades of fibromyalgia in the OR that they've had forever and their doctors have just gaslit them. I don't need any glory. Rewind. I don't need any glory. I don't need a pat on the back. I love myself. I do this to save lives and for the glory of the God who gave me these experiences and talents to use to benefit humanity. The more followers I or those like me spouting the same message have, the more the word gets out and hopefully drives a change in the industry. I have heard repeatedly from patients featured on my podcast that they feel liberated and so very grateful that I gave them the platform to share their story. And they don't have to retell it over and over. They just send somebody to the podcast to listen to it. So it takes a lot of trauma off their plate, and it has off of mine. I have even tried to make a way for patients to share anonymously who are not comfortable being on camera or in the public eye, but they still want to contribute. There is no expense in my patient interviews that they haven't consented to. They are not being taken advantage of. They know exactly what I'm going to do to interview and produce their episode and to market the episode. They own all their own pictures. They own all their material. I stamp it with my copyright, but that's just so it doesn't get shared far and wide. They retain full ownership of everything. So whether they appear or they don't appear, that's for a patient to weigh before they come on the podcast. In this same segment on this person's website was also an accusation that I wanted to be one source of information on metal hypersensitivity. Well, my ego is not that big. Firstly, that's impossible. Not possible to be the one source in the public eye. Second, it is factual that I do happen to be one of the only persons speaking out about this in the public eye on a regular basis. There's other episodes out there. There's other podcasts. There's other patients that post a reel. I welcome anyone and everyone to jump on board. There is room for all of us. And I am certainly growing quite tired, honestly, of being the only one that cares the most about this in the public eye. So please start a blog, start a podcast, write a book. It is all needed, and there is room for all of us. And if you want to volunteer or intern for the Heavily Meddled podcast, I can use your help. Trust me. The next one is simple. Using ChatGPT to generate content. Show me a journalist who doesn't, and I will show you someone that's not a journalist. That said, I will tell you that most of the content you see from me is written by my own hand. I wrote content long before even the internet or AI. Do I sometimes use AI for convenience, for outlines, for clarification, for ideas, for templates? Sure, I do. They are tools. If I wrote all my content using AI, that would be a big problem. But just to give you an idea of how little I use it, it might be 5%. It's like our brain or our cell phone. I don't even use the tools I have for even a fraction of what they're probably capable of. I don't have time to figure it out. Next one. This one has to do with publishing a surgeon list, which I have honestly never done. Because I was in this person's group and I'm in other groups, I was led to surgeons that remove hardware. I am a patient of these providers. Others that I know from circles I run in are as well. I think there are groups that have lists. I know there are, but I don't, let alone published or unpublished. I have no list, confidential or otherwise. I am aware of multiple groups that have insinuated poor outcomes with a particular provider and groups that try to dictate legitimate and safe surgeons. This is a really slippery slope, in my opinion. Patients and their surgical cases are really complicated. Any doctor that has graduated medical school or chiropractic college or nursing school or a certificate program is a credentialed professional. That means they're legitimate. Surgeons are very easy to investigate online. There are multiple websites that list reviews, complaints, board sanctions, and a lot of really detailed information. It is dangerous to be the head of a group and tell people what surgeons may or may not be good for them, or to weigh in on a surgical outcome regarding anybody in a given group. Surgery is risky. It has always been a benefit versus risk analysis, and there are always complications, especially with emerging procedures like surgical hardware removal. There are going to be bumps in the road. That's how medicine advances. There will be adverse events. There will be death. That's why consents are signed. It is dangerous to weigh in on patient cases if you are not the patient or a direct provider of the patient, unless you are standing in the room where the surgery takes place and you are a caregiver for the patient. You just shouldn't comment. To do so is reckless, and it leaves one open for liability. I don't comment on others' surgical cases or outcomes unless my opinion is asked for. And if I do, it's a personal opinion, but I certainly don't do it in a group setting. It's more like one-on-one. Maybe I'll say something to a guest in an interview, but it's an opinion. It's not a mandate. I don't throw doctors under the bus when I am not a party to the case and I wasn't there for the surgery. This causes providers to turn their back on hysterical patients and to not want to help the communities that they have previously stuck their neck out for. I'm aware of multiple surgeons who will no longer deal with metal allergic patients due to the drama that surrounds the cases. This is tragic, and it serves to undermine the very science that we are trying to have advanced for the benefit of our community. Our collective medical PTSD must be controlled and dealt with before and after meeting with providers, or our plight will fall on deaf ears. The loss of these great surgeons was a huge blow to our fragile community. I was accused of interviewing a patient's surgeon without the permission of the patient. The truth of that statement is that I am personally a patient of that provider. I have my own relationship with that provider. That provider has provided surgical services to me and also to my husband and to quite a few others that I've sent, and all with phenomenal results. That relationship's between us. It has no bearing on anybody else. If it's a surgeon you don't like, by all means, go somewhere else. But please don't throw accusations out there that are unfounded into the air. Your problem surgeon may be somebody else's miracle. When I share the name of a surgeon, it's usually my surgeon and my personal experience with that provider. I do not make recommendations. I only share my experience. The more people that share their experiences, strength, and hope, the more others can make informed decisions. So please don't accuse me of directing patients to unsafe practices. Any surgeon could be unsafe on a given day. That's just painting with too broad a brush. Having less providers in our community harms the community. Having more advances science and the art of implants and hardware removal to benefit those who are currently suffering. I have to speak very directly to a crazy serious allegation from this person and group that I had encouraged somebody or someone looking for care to have their teeth pulled, and I was trying to take and have their money put in a trust. That is preposterous. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could be further from the truth. And I deny that with every fiber of my being. I will not name this sweet lady, but this sweet person was introduced to me through multiple people and lives an hour from my home. Many, many hours of dialogue with her were had. The person was in self-described suicidal pain and crying out to me, among others, for solutions. I had some of my personal providers that specialize in dental care and the care she was seeking after agree to see her at no cost, agree to provide imaging, to provide exams, to provide studies and recommendations at no cost. These are providers that are very friendly and not dismissive of metal allergies. I was able to set up an appointment for this person. I was willing and did pick up the patient at her home at no cost to transport her to the appointment and nothing more. I think I maybe bought her lunch too. And I did that. And unfortunately, she was systemically allergic to her full mouth metal dental implants. And according to these providers, when they spoke to her, the only alternative at all was to remove the implants. And it wasn't something they recommended because it wouldn't improve her quality of life. It might worsen it because it would leave her nothing to chew on. And there wasn't a good answer in this situation. And there was no guaranteed good outcome of any sort. I offered to be a listening ear, but I would never give advice in a situation like that. That is an extremely personal decision and always to be made with a provider on risk versus benefit. This was an elderly single woman that lives alone in a home that was literally almost falling down that she was unable to care for. She needed help with activities of daily living, cleaning, sorting, lawn care, and every sort of home service imaginable without any apparent resources for the same. I organized a group of church volunteers to provide lawn services, to help clean and to organize and to help her get transport to medical appointments. I provided her the name of my pain management doctor. I don't know whether she did or did not take advantage of those resources. She became inconsistent in her communication, but I did just recently hear from her just a few months ago, again asking me for help. Now, I have not been able to reconnect due to my own current life circumstances and load, but I wish her well. And I certainly cannot be the bad guy if help is still being sought. I did suggest that this person speak with an attorney to put her assets, and she did have some, into a trust for her own medical care. She had someone that she thought was a friend helping her at home, but she expressed concerns to me that she was being taken advantage of. She was going to leave her house and all of her assets to this person in return for the help that she was being given, which honestly wasn't that much help, according to her. When I looked at the situation with my own eyes and at her request, I saw a person who was not working in the best interest of the patient and instead serving herself for what she could gain from this disadvantaged, suffering woman. Again, I provided an attorney's name and a suggestion that a trust might be helpful because I have one for my own family. This woman's precious assets should remain hers alone so that her care and quality of life are paramount and so that they can be improved and so she can be provided for. I even said in regards to talk about appointing a trustee that I would be unwilling to serve because it would be a conflict of interest. I offered to introduce her to others that might be willing and able to help, and that is the end of what I know about that situation. I do know that many of us are so sick, and this woman was no exception. There were many inconsistencies in her perceptions and her stories, and there is no fault ascribed to that. I care about it only to the point that my name is cleared of any wrongdoing. Of course, I wish this woman nothing but peace, joy, love, and light. Then there was the claim of promoting pseudoscience. I make a great effort to have credentialed professionals as guests on my podcast when I am not telling patient stories. The disclaimer is on my website and before and after every podcast episode. I do not provide medical advice. Medical decisions always need to be discussed with the patient's own provider. Even my credentialed professionals cannot prescribe medical treatment, but I'm not aware of any pseudoscience being promoted. I promote patient stories, which are personal experiences, my opinions, which are just that, and I let medical providers provide their advice and experience for the context of providing boxes to look outside of for others on their healing journey. This is a new area, and we definitely need more science and more studies. Another allegation that came about was that I was not willing to speak to the FDA or the government bodies to improve regulation, advocate for change to guidelines, and improve patient outcomes, to share my story or my experience to help others. Well, we all know that I've kept my experience completely to myself. I would welcome the opportunity to speak before the FDA, the CDC, or any conference or governing body. I don't know how much my story contributes, but I'm certainly willing to share it. I have stated that it's not where I'm going to focus my efforts because I believe the machine is corrupt. I believe the biggest difference can be made at grassroots and not at government level. But that does not mean speaking to those organizations is off the table. I want to channel my focus where I can get the most bang for my buck. And it's telling patients that they can have hope and create change. They can save their lives as well as others. In closing, I want to talk about my goals for the Heavily Metal podcast and website going forward. The only purpose in this podcast is to save lives and to increase public and provider awareness on systemic metal hypersensitivity. The end. I will put out provider information and patient stories and other relevant related information as much as I can for as long as I can. I don't know how long that will be. I'm in the process of creating a course on metal hypersensitivity that will be approximately 50 modules, A to Z through metal allergies. Hopefully it's out before fall, definitely by the end of the year. This has been in the works for some time. There will be a charge for that course, but it will be nominal, a couple $100. Don't have the exact price yet, but something around there. 100% of the proceeds of that course will go towards supporting the infrastructure of the Heavily Metal podcast. The course, the podcast, the website. This course is in answer to the many people that contact me on a regular basis, begging me to coach them. I don't have time. I'm not a medical provider. I'm still on my own healing journey. I am fortunate to have some pretty big backers behind that project, and I'm hopeful that it will reach a lot of people and change a lot of lives. If it saves one life, that is enough. If it saves many, that is better. If it makes a lot of money, then my goal is to start a 501c3 charitable organization to help fund metal allergy testing and revision surgeries for those who are suffering and have lost employment or other health benefits. I would be overjoyed. Maybe I would even leave my career in real estate. I've always wanted to work in medicine and was almost on my way into medical school when I got sick with my own illnesses. Yes, I think big. If it goes well enough, maybe I'll even think about finishing my schooling. But right now, this is more important. Heavily Metaled has been a labor of love for me. Again, I work a full-time job as a real estate agent. I'm not a wealthy real estate agent. I only charge 1% for a full service listing, and I give 1% back to my buyers as buyer rebates. The average real estate agent commission is 6%. I don't have to do it this way, but I choose to do it this way because I don't believe in taking people's big money. I don't believe in big commissions. I believe in keeping money in the pockets of those I serve. My whole life has been based on service, and this is why defending myself is so important to me. It is okay to make money. There's an investment from other people into their own well-being. I can't take the 20 hours plus a week that I'm spending on the podcast indefinitely and work for free. If you can and you're independently wealthy, well, then that's great. But I am not that person. What I can do is be conscientious and affordable and to try to leave everyone and everything better than I found them. That is my heart's greatest desire. The only corporate interest that I'm beholden to is to the betterment of patient health in regards to metal hypersensitivity. Anything that goes against the narrative will be a conflict of interest for my goals and the goals of this podcast that I have created and that I'm so proud of. And when I speak to this narrative, I mean the metal allergic patient narrative. So if it goes against the narrative to help patients, I'm out. I have expressed the thought of perhaps creating a book of combined patient stories. And if that ever happens, then it will be with full consent and permission of the patients who are involved. Will there be royalties? I don't know how it would be structured, but it would be structured correctly through proper legal channels and benefit the right endeavors with the consent of every person involved. I never wanted to do this without the person who is throwing the vile accusations in my direction. I still grieve that loss, and I will not stoop to the level of saying bad things about a person in the middle of their journey. I can just state that the accusations are untrue, state my goals and intentions and history, and leave it there. This person uttered that I am a wolf in sheep's clothing, and yet at the same time uttered that we are a community that stands together. We aren't doing a very good job of that, are we? I have stated before, and I will reiterate, that there is room for all of us and a call for all of us in this room. It takes a village to change the direction of something such as this. We need to work harder to heal misunderstandings and overcome differences. There will be differences of opinion always since the dawn of time, but that does not mean any one person or platform is more or less valuable than another. I will always wish this person her own health and healing. People ask me why I do. I'm not a hater. It just goes against my nature. Her goal was to share in laying it all out for everyone so they can form their own personal opinion and make a decision on whether or not to be associated with my podcast. My goal is the same. I hope you can hear my heart. I will continue to serve with every breath and fiber of my being for as long as I live. I get 3 to 4 emails a week telling me that I have saved a person's life. The need is out there, and they're not all on social media. My reply is always that it is not me. It's God. With all that said, I'm taking the summer off to heal from surgery, to heal from hurt and heartbreak, to grieve the passing of my mother, and to just sit in solitude in the mountains, on a beach, on a ship. The next several episodes are already recorded and will come out in the fall. I'm looking for some guests that are willing to share about reactions and healing from metal hypersensitivity in regards to these following surgeries, if you are or know anyone that would love to share their experience, strength, and hope. I need stories from those with hip, knee, and shoulder implants, cardiac stents, vascular stents, abdominal clips, spinal cord stimulators, dental implants, pacemakers, IUDs, breast biopsy markers, or hardware from the brain, heart, foot, ankle, hand, wrist. All of those would be welcome. I would love to cover all of the parts of the body. If you are interested, you can send an email to hello@heavilymetalled.com. Heavily Metalled is HEAVILYMEATALLED. hello@heavilymetalled.com. Just make sure there's 2 L's in metalled. I have great episodes coming up with orthopedic analysis, an episode on adverse event reporting and how to file yours, on detox, parasites, metal hypersensitivity, interviews with spine surgeons, and more. As a little bit of a postlude, I will let you know, for those of you who don't, and this should be a concern for everybody in the metal allergic and integrative medicine and alternative medicine communities. YouTube has recently, in the last few months, put out a new medical misinformation policy. And basically, you can read the lengthy policy. I can link to it in the show notes, but the policy states that if you don't align with what the narrative is of the World Health Organization, or WHO, as they are not so affectionately known, that they can and will censor and shut down your podcast. This will cut off not just metal allergic information, but this will cut off a lot of very valuable information on alternative and controversial healthcare that is proven, is studied, is cutting edge, is fringe. It will devastate a lot of people and leave a lot of people sicker and looking for many more answers. So I would encourage you to go follow Heavily Metalled on Rumble. I'll put the link in the show notes again. Go follow all of your favorite medical related podcasts on Rumble, and you will make sure that you stay up to date on everything relevant and don't get shut off on a whim by the great and too mighty YouTube. I'll see you in the fall. In the meantime, I'm still telling the world that we're not going to take it anymore. Thank you for tuning in today. Please don't forget to follow me on social media and to like, share, and subscribe. My primary mission is reaching out to others who may be suffering from hypersensitivity reactions to metal implants and pointing them to resources that can assist with hope, help, and healing. If you know someone that suffers from a chronic illness, you might ask if they have any implanted metal hardware and if they've ever had a reaction to jewelry or metals of any kind. Might not even be on their radar. Visit us at heavilymetalled.com, where you can find images and documentation relating to our show today, as well as a number of valuable resources and links to assist you on your own personal healing journey. Until next time, keep on rocking.